Israelis are celebrating a hostage rescue in Gaza. An IDF soldier taken captive on October 7th has been reunited with her family. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Netanyahu continues to stand strong against calls for a ceasefire, vowing that Israel will never surrender to tyranny and terror.
Israeli ground forces are now advancing on Gaza City, a Hamas stronghold, while a wave of anti-Semitism is surging around the world. CBN's Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem.
This is the joyous reunion between Private Ori Megadish and her grandmother. Her neighbors came to celebrate, and many even took to the streets.
Private Ori Megadish is reunited with her family. She's now home in Israel, but 238 hostages are not.
The IDF chief spokesman reminded the world that many more remain in captivity.
The Israel Defense Forces has a moral obligation to do anything and everything to bring every hostage home. We are operating on the ground in Gaza and doing everything necessary to free the hostages from Hamas and free Gaza from Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the foreign media by saying Israel's war with Hamas is a battle of civilizations.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Bible says that there is a time for peace and a time for war. This is a time for a war for our common future. Today we draw a line between the forces of civilization and the forces of barbarism. It is a time for everyone to decide where they stand. Israel will stand against the forces of barbarism until victory.
Netanyahu views October 7th as a global line in the sand.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a turning point for leaders and nations. It is time for all of us to decide if we are willing to fight for a future of hope and promise, or surrender to tyranny and terror. Now rest assured, Israel will fight.
And that fight is spreading far beyond Israel and the Gaza Strip. From an anti-Semitic mob hunting Jews at a Russian airport to tens of thousands in this pro-Palestinian march in London. In the U.S., college campuses are the scene of anti-Semitic incidents. At Cooper Union in New York, a group of Jewish students forced to barricade themselves from a pro-Palestinian group. While at Cornell University, officials sent police to guard a Jewish center and kosher dining hall after posts threatening violence against Jewish students appeared on a website not affiliated with the school.
I mean, it's worse than I've ever seen it, Chris, in terms of just the temperature of the anger and how it's spilling over into very real-world hate.
That's the view from Laura Atkins, opinion editor of the Jewish publication The Forward. She tells CBN News about spending 3 weeks chronicling Israelis who went through the horrors of October 7th.
It feels good to be able to give back by helping tell people's stories and sit with people that are in sometimes the worst days of their lives. But I won't pretend that I'm not afraid with all of the anti-Semitism we're seeing, all of the just hate and vitriol and misinformation. It's a really frightening time to be Jewish, which is not something I usually say.
How has this affected American Jews?
Just astronomically. I mean, before I came here to cover the war, the first day before Israel had even done any retaliation after the October 7th terror attacks, there were massive protests in Times Square calling for intifada, which means kill Jews, calling by resistance by any means necessary.
On the battlefield, the IDF chief spokesman confirmed Israeli forces expanded their armored and infantry forces in the Gaza Strip. The goal is to collapse Hamas and bring back the hostages. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, Doron Spielman is a spokesperson for the IDF, and he joins us now live from Tel Aviv. So tell us about the rescue of this soldier. All Israel is celebrating. Can you tell us about the operation to save her?
Well, today is the 25th day of the war since Hamas invaded Israel's borders and took hundreds of people hostages, killing well over 1,400 people. And one of those hostages that was taken was Private Ori Magadesh. She's a female soldier in a specific battalion. She was taken and not heard from again in the Gaza Strip. Yesterday, our forces, as part of our expanded campaign inside the Gaza Strip, which involves ground forces, aerial forces, and intelligence, sent a special forces team along with other support teams, and thankfully, thank God, managed to rescue this young woman, Ori Megadesh, and bring her back home to her family. It's really, in a very dark time, a ray of light for the Israeli people. It shows hope. I think it also shows a real justification for the way that our campaign is being handled and the steps that we're taking, including increasing our campaign inside Gaza right now.
It looks like you're in for a very long and difficult fight. The Hamas has all kinds of tunnels, hundreds of miles of tunnels. How is the IDF prepared for that?
Gordon, you know, they have been preparing for this for 16 years. Right? All that international aid money that was supposed to be helping the people of Gaza, Hamas sunk hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars to creating this underground maze of hundreds of miles of tunnels. And, you know, they've embedded themselves very deeply. And what we know is this is really what we're seeing unfold right now is really part of the script that Hamas had prepared well in advance. This kind of follows the ISIS/Hamas movie line, right? It begins with the massacre of Israelis. Then they retreat back to Gaza, go underground, and push their civilians away. And then when a civilian is killed, unfortunately, they then turn to the international community, trying to distract the international community so that they can then continue with all their terror methods. And what we're doing in terms of our ground operations, our aerial operations, our Navy, and our engineers is we are pinpointing right now that Hamas leadership. We have eliminated just in the last 24 hours dozens of Hamas terrorists, including 5 of their commanders that are in charge of such things as part of their aerial commanders, their central commanders for the Gaza Strip. And we're weakening their structure, their infrastructure. And you have to understand, they're operating from not only inside tunnels, but inside universities, hospitals, such as we released about the Shifa Hospital. They've been embedded, and we're flushing them out, and we're eliminating them, along with seriously damaging their infrastructure. But the answer is, this is going to be a long haul. The damage that was inflicted on us was major, and therefore our answer is going to be major. It's nothing less than dismantling Hamas completely.
How are you going to wage the, I'll call it the ideological war that, you know, the IDF is somehow engaged in war crimes, and as you're trying to rescue hostages, you're trying to free your own citizens that have been taken. And already we're seeing calls from the EU and the UN. What is Israel going to do on that front?
On a legal basis, the IDF operates according to the rules of war, which calls for trying to distinguish between civilians and, you know, non-combatants and terrorists, which we do whenever possible. We do strike military targets, and we're never purposely striking a civilian, a non-military asset. Hamas, on the other hand, is breaking international laws. They follow the laws of evil, the laws of terror. They push, you know, terror. They push civilians directly in harm's way. And we really have to understand the facts, first of all. And the world needs to understand the facts. Hamas, every single rocket they're firing at Israel, 8,000 plus rockets, every single one of them is coming in contradiction to international law because they're being fired towards civilian centers. The use of civilians, putting them in hospitals, all this is in contradiction of international law. What we do, first of all, we have justice and right on our side. Because we are following international laws, we're moving forward with our operational capabilities, and we're doing our best to explain this to the world. And there are those who are listening. Unfortunately, we have too many times where we've seen the international press run with headlines using Hamas, of all people, as a reliable source, such as the hospital so-called bombing that eventually we proved that it was Hamas that bombed themselves. But people who want the truth need to wait for the IDF to provide the answers. It may take an extra hour, but the truth will be involved in the answers. And that's the best we can do, is to tell the truth and to act with moral and justice, which is what we're doing.
How would you encourage our viewers to help you in this time? It seems to be absolutely overwhelming on a worldwide scale. How can we help?
First of all, you have millions of viewers, and your viewers are, you know, the very fact that we're speaking right now and that you so accurately convey the story. Every one of those people is another person that can channel the story outward, can get on social media, can speak to their people at work, can amplify the message of the truth, so that those who are falling into Hamas's trap, the deception that Hamas is putting, it's just simply a big ruse to fool the entire world, to really combat those people who are either being fooled or allowing themselves to be fooled, and push forth the truth. This really is a battle of wills. As I heard Chris's previous report before I came on of what's happening in college campuses and the intimidation. The only way to stand up intimidation is to stand proud and tell the real story. And that's what I know you're doing. And I would encourage your viewers to be very active in doing that as well.
Well said. Well, Doron Spielman, thanks for joining us, and I encourage you to be strong and courageous. These are trying times, and we appreciate your strength.
Thank you so much.
Let me remind everyone at home, when you hear reports coming out of the Gaza Ministry of Health, please realize that's a propaganda arm of Hamas. They're part of that terror network. And I'll be very blunt in my description of Hamas. It's an Islamic death cult. They want to die, they want to be martyrs, and they want to take as many Jews with them as they possibly can. No one in the world should support that. That is, it's the face of evil, and we need to stand against it. Well, since October 7th, the Hamas attacks, there's been a growing number of anti-Semitic incidents right here in the United States and then around the world. Joining us for more on this is Rabbi Abraham Cooper. He's the Director for Global Social Action at the Simon Wiesenthal Center. And Rabbi, thank you so much for being with us.
Gordon, thank you for having me, and thank you for being there and being the truth teller.
You'd think the atrocities by Hamas would have sparked sympathy for Israel, for the Jewish people. But in many parts of the world, we're actually seeing the opposite. Why the explosion of anti-Semitism?
Well, it's interesting. In the first few days, I had a number of interviews from journalists from Europe, all of whom said they were sympathetic, supported a two-state solution, sympathetic to the Palestinians. But I kept hearing, I didn't sign on for this. We were hoping and anticipating that supporters of the Palestinian cause would be revolted by what they saw, what we all saw. These were worse than Nazis. The Nazis tried to erase their crimes, and they were broadcasting their crimes. I think, in large measure, the shock troops for the mainstreaming of the narrative of Hamas, genocidal, anti-Semitic hate, turn out to be student groups across campuses in the United States with the support of some of their professors. And frankly, in terms of most college presidents and chancellors, AWOL. So they quickly, you had these massive rallies already in London, in Germany, and then on campuses here in the States, which quickly shifted and focused on this narrative, genocidal narrative of hatred of Jews. And remember, since even before COVID, we've had a spike in anti-Semitic hate crimes. A lot of it was fueled and is fueled by social media, by TikTok, by Telegram. That's already been in place. But the explosion of hatred and the embrace of the inhuman massacres and everything else that's going on, and the silence of NGOs, women's groups saying nothing about the rape of Israeli women. You can go right down the list. UNICEF, 40 Israeli infants, murdered, not a word. But I think for us, the main crossroads in trying to push back, at least in this part of the phenomenon, really is going to be the college campuses. But it's against the backdrop of the fact that the squad, members of the squad, have been able to get away with some of the worst anti-Israel and sometimes anti-Semitic venom, no price to pay, where CARE, an organization which made the top 10 anti-Semite list of the Simon Wiesenthal Center not long ago, was listed by the White House as an important, ally and source to fight anti-Semitism when they're a significant part of the problem. So if we're going to fight back, we have to recognize the unfortunate truth that we have anti-Semites from the far right. We have plenty of anti-Semitism from the left, and universities here, along with some of the media, have allowed the moving of the goalposts of the debate over the Holy Land that was once upon a time, well, will a Palestinian state include East Jerusalem, to now a genocidal call to basically get rid of all Jews. That has to change, and for that to happen, we're going to need a lot of help from our neighbors.
Well, what can we do at the university level? We've been warning on this show for a long time about the boycott, divestment, and sanction BDS. We've been warning about that. We've been warning about the rise of that on college campuses. It seems that the Palestinians have been funding that and funding those campus chapters. What can we do to say, no, we've got to have the truth come out? This really is a call for genocide of Jews. When you hear the slogan from the river to the sea, please understand what that means. When you hear Intifada, please understand what that means. It means rise up and kill Jews. What can we do to turn the tide on college campuses?
I think there are a number of points. First, we can point to so many of the elite universities, but thank God, a lot of the biggest donors to Penn, University of Pennsylvania, which used to be, after Yeshiva University, the most sought-after place for Jewish kids to go to. Jewish students there have been left hanging, and a lot of mega donors have snapped shut their checkbooks. Alumni have a lot to say in terms of the future of presidents and chancellors, and publicly coming out and saying, I'm not giving you another dime. I don't like what's going on here. I'm not asking for anything more for Jewish students, but you're basically not doing anything to protect your Jewish kids or to create an environment that's supposed to be intimidation-free. That's number one. Number two, maybe I'll just call out two governors. Ron DeSantis, very creative, went after to defund and basically push off campus the Palestinian group based on some of the anti-terror laws that they had down in Florida. The governor of New York, Ms. Hochul, just went up to Cornell yesterday to stand with the Jewish students to let everyone know that these threats of violence and rape and all the rest is not going to be put up with. So we need all the governors of all 50 states, and that means also the regions and those and the budgets. We need a message to go out to the elites like Harvard and Yale, but also state schools. In California, we've had a disastrous situation with the UC system and very big disappointments with University of Southern California. It's just a national issue, and we have to focus our attention on the purse strings and on the political implications. It's going to be a long haul here also. It will not be turned around in a day. But I also think, and I know that you reported it, that and maybe a lot of Americans don't understand it. I'm here in Tokyo and they don't get it at all. This isn't just round 4 or 5 between Hamas and Israel. What Hamas did on October 7th was show that they're Nazis. And all of the backbiting and debates and name calling between Jews in the state of Israel and frankly here in the United States, that disappeared in a 24-hour period. And right now, all of those ideological differences aren't important. What is important is to eradicate Hamas. And here at home, it means we have to have a reality check where we're not going to allow Palestinians have every right to express themselves, and if they want to have their state, a two-state solution, whatever it might be. But going around and screaming and threatening your neighbor This is not Jabalia. It's not the West Bank, and it's not an UNRWA school. This is the United States of America. And when you're on a campus, many people are also on scholarship, you learn how to deal with people who have different views than you do. But American Jewry is not going to be dealing with people who've endorsed, absorbed, and pushed the Hamas narrative. That's the red line that we're not going to let them cross anymore.
Final question. As a rabbi, what do you tell people, both Jews and Christians? We've seen the face of evil here, and we've said for a long time, never again, but here it is happening again, and it's happening now. What do you tell people to encourage them?
Well, first of all, people of faith, you have to buckle up and prove that you're a person of faith, and show it to your kids and grandchildren, and not forsake Israel, get back over there. But I think in the broader sense, what we've experienced now across American campuses is that we've had generation of kids raised that there is no good or evil, absolutely. It's like a multiple choice question. It's how you feel. No, Hamas is just shown horrifically over the murdering and maiming those innocent people on Simchat Torah. Yes, there is absolute evil in the world, and it's up to every generation to decide whether or not you're going to join the fight against it, or you're going to stand on the sidelines and hope and wish for the best. The one lesson we should learn from the Shoah, from the Nazi Holocaust, is there are no bystanders. You're either going to fight evil or you'll be consumed by it.
Well said. We are going to be strong and courageous. We're not going to be afraid or dismayed. We're going to stand with you, and please stand strong. These are trying days, and we appreciate you.
God bless you, Gordon. Wish we can have 1,000 like you out there. But we at the Jewish community appreciate everything you've done and will continue to do.
Thank you. Thanks for being with us.
In the wake of the October 7th attacks, hundreds of thousands of Israeli citizens are displaced from their communities. Julie Stahl introduces us to a Jerusalem real estate manager who found a creative solution to help hundreds of families find a place to live.
Avi Goldberg owns City of Gold Property Management. When war broke out, he had what he called a crazy idea.
We have many rentals and vacant apartments where owners just come themselves and use them every so often. And we sent an email to our owners about the opportunity to give their homes to people down south who really needed it, who haven't been out of the bomb shelter in weeks, and many of them jumped at the opportunity.
This initiative includes Americans who are giving their luxury vacation apartments in Jerusalem free of charge to Israelis who are forced to flee the fighting and rocket attacks in southern Israel.
These are people's homes. They don't give it to anyone. And here, they're giving it to random people they've never met before.
He quickly realized evacuees needed more than just a place to stay.
Our first family was about to arrive. Some owner generously gave his apartment over. And I spoke to my wife, and she's like, oh, they have little kids. Maybe we'll bring them some toys. And she calls me after she meets them, and she says, Avi, it's not toys we're talking here. They have nothing. They came with the clothing on their backs. They don't have socks. They don't have clothing. They don't have food. They have nothing.
Goldberg named the project after Nathaniel Young, a 20-year-old soldier killed defending his base.
Nathaniel was my dear brother. He moved to Israel about 2 years ago. Sadly, he was killed on the 7th of October when the war started, when terrorists infiltrated Israel from Gaza.
While observing the Jewish week of mourning for Nathaniel, Elliot Young and family received so many gifts they wanted to share them.
A lot of amazing people, different organizations, people I knew, people I didn't, brought me different packages of food and things, and we just had so much that we didn't need it. We heard about this, and I just brought a box of stuff today, and at the same time, other people are just bringing things.
100 volunteers are helping in this project. So far, they've housed more than 250 people, many of them from Netivot, where terrorists hijacked a police car and drove through the streets.
The children were in the house all the time for a week and a half, full of fear, not only afraid of terrorists. Every time we heard shooting, we didn't know who it was. The fear was also from the rocket attacks. Underneath the house where we live, there was a rocket that the IDF blew up. But just to hear this, it was like being on the battlefield.
Israel Haddad received an offer to stay in a Jerusalem apartment. It took 2 days to decide it was safe enough to travel with his wife and 3 children.
We couldn't believe at first that we arrived at an apartment that there are people like this. They gave us a home. There are no words to even thank these people.
Young's message to the world:
look for the truth and protect the Jews in your country.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Stories of hope, even in the midst of a war. Terry, back over to you.
She was in bed when terrorists hit and blew up the building right next door. This elderly woman remains too terrified to go outside, like so many other survivors. With no food, they might have starved. Instead, here's how you are bringing food to them, door to door.
We left one war and ended up in another.
To escape the war in Ukraine, Daria and her family left for Israel. Then Hamas attacked cities along the Gaza border.
We do not have a safe room, so we ran to the basement. I tried to stay calm, to keep my kids from seeing how terrified I was.
This elderly woman is a shut-in. She was in bed when terrorists attacked Ashkelon.
One rocket hit the building next door. The whole first floor was gone. My daughter wrapped me in a blanket and helped me get to a hospital. Then she found this apartment and we moved here.
Constantly under the threat of attack, many Israelis have essentially moved into bomb shelters. They're afraid to go out and food is now scarce. We're walking the ravaged streets of Ashkelon and going door to door, searching for families who have stayed in their homes and those living in the shelters. Thanks to your support, CBN Israel put together food bags to give to families.
My daughter and I are very grateful. Yesterday, we couldn't leave the house and you brought us food. I can eat today. Thank you very much.
A very big thank you to all the people helping families like mine in such a difficult situation. We try to stay inside as much as possible, and we're asked if we needed help. This was a big deal to us. I thank CBN Israel for your willingness to help people. You are standing by us. Thank you very much.
CBN Israel exists because of your generosity. Thank you. You are truly, truly making a difference. Gordon?
Well, you can't fathom it, the grief that's ripping us apart. That's how one survivor of the atrocities in Israel described the terrible fallout. She and so many others need ongoing support to get through the devastation. And thanks to you, that's exactly what they're getting.
For us to have incoming rockets is not strange. Even infiltrations is not strange. But the infiltrations on this scale and the amount of destruction and inhumane deeds done, no one in this community has been unscathed.
Every single person here knows somebody that's had some barbaric actions done to them.
What I will feel more late after I will understand the trauma, what they did to my kibbutz. That's it.
The feeling that you can't help. Sorry.
The children were scared. She was afraid to sleep. She would wear her shoes and clothes. She sat on a folding chair by the door, but she didn't want to lie down. She thought it would happen again. It happened again in the evening, and we rushed to the stairs.
You can't fathom it. You can't fathom it. It's the grief that's ripping us apart.
And it's never happened something like that. And now when it happened, I don't know how I felt safe before. And I don't know how we are going back again.
So many children, so many kids, so many adults, people that have family and just can't. You have to understand 25% of a small place, a small kibbutz, a small village are gone. This is a number that you cannot imagine. We cannot be alone here. I mean, we need a lot of support.
We have been relying on the generous donation of places like CBN, which is an incredible organization that is not just with us the day before the war or the day after. They've been with us on a long journey.
Thank you very much for your supporting us. Really, sometimes I feel that the world don't know what is this terrorist.
These people who are looking out for us and saying, these people are refugees, they need a place to be. And this is donors and community people standing together with Israel.
Well, the face of evil has been revealed. Let's be the hands and feet of love and compassion to reach out to those survivors, to let them know that we care and we want to be with you in your time of need. We want to provide for you. If you want to do that and do that very tangible ways, call us right now, 1-800-700-7000. Just say, you can count on me. I want to stand with Israel. I want to stand with everything that is happening there. How can I help the evacuees? How can I help these survivors? And you can do it right now by giving to CBN Israel. You can designate your gift by calling 1-800-700-7000. Say, I want to give to CBN Israel. You can write to us at CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 23463. You can also text CBN Israel to 71777. CBN is mobilizing everything we can do to help people there. We're mobilizing Operation Blessing. We're putting a lot of resources into it, but we need help. So call us, 1-800-700-7000.
In the face of growing concerns over artificial intelligence, President Joe Biden signed an executive order to establish new standards for AI safety and security. The order requires AI developers to share safety test results and other information with the U.S. government and to ensure the safety of AI tech before it's released to the public. New standards to protect against using AI to engineer dangerous biological materials and establish an advanced cybersecurity program to make software and networks more secure. The Supreme Court is considering the limits of the government's relationship with social media today. The arguments on whether state laws regulating social media violate the Constitution. Legal experts say the cases are essential in monitoring government censorship of online speech and whether being kicked off social media is unconstitutional. The pair of cases, based on state laws in California and Michigan, involve government officials who block followers on their Twitter and Facebook accounts. I want to remind you, you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.
Marisol was fascinated by the occult, fortune-telling, Santeria, and witchcraft. Then one day, she witnessed a voodoo initiation ceremony, and what she saw scared her to death.
I wanted to know what everything was all about, especially the spiritual realm. I wanted to see what they would tell me that nobody else can see.
For years, Marisol Pareja consulted psychics, but she wanted more than a glimpse into the future.
I thought I was going to find the truth. I was looking for a feeling, and I didn't know it at that time.
That feeling was love and security. Her parents split up when she was 7, leaving Marisol and her siblings to bounce between their mom and their abusive alcoholic father.
I know they both loved us. It's just we just didn't see it. I did not feel loved. I did not.
What she did feel was anger.
I used to take it out on other girls. I used to beat up other girls in school. If they messed with me, I saw all these other kids that had families and I didn't have it, so I wanted that.
She kept searching until she found a family through her best friend.
They'd invite me places, they'd buy me clothes. You know, they loved on me where I wasn't getting it at home. And believe it or not, the craziest thing about that is that they were into Santeria. They were into witchcraft. It wasn't odd to me. I wasn't really scared.
It wasn't the first time Marisol was exposed to the occult. Her dad had remarried, and his new wife from Ecuador called herself a witch.
She would tell me she used to go to a witch doctor. He would do like cleansings on her and readings for her.
Marisol didn't participate in the occult practices going on around her, but it did pique her curiosity.
I just wanted an interaction. I wanted an encounter. I wanted to see something supernatural.
At 18, she started her search, beginning with Catholic and Protestant churches.
But since I didn't have that feeling, that encounter, I kept on looking.
So she started going to palm readers, spending the next 7 years seeking truth and a future filled with love and hope.
They're very impressive. They really draw people in because they can tell you things. They'll tell you all good stuff. They'll tell you all what they see as far as positive. They'll tell you who to stay away from. But I can't recall them ever telling me anything like really bad.
Then at 25, she married and later had a daughter. Now that she had the family she always wanted, she stepped away from the occult. Then after 8 years, her husband left, taking the business she helped build with him.
Oh, I was angry. I got ripped off big time. Greed came in and overshadowed him, and then I was left alone with my daughter in the house.
Again, she sought hope from the spiritual realm, this time visiting a voodoo priest who knew the name of her psychic.
I got goosebumps when he told me that. So what I was seeking, you know, this reality, this feeling, and this supernatural encounter, I found it with this man. So I asked him, how do you know that? And he said, Los Muertos. And I said, Los Muertos, the dead? I can tell that these spirits were pulling on him to tell me other things, like telling him, tell her this, tell her this.
As she continued going back for more readings, her circumstances improved. She believed the spirits deserved the credit.
I actually got a very well-paying job, had a boyfriend. They brought me love and they brought me lots of money.
But when her boyfriend broke up with her, Marisol's anger rose up again, sending her back to the voodoo priest. She even said she would join the order until she witnessed an initiation ceremony.
This girl falls on the ground and they've got all the priests around her. And when she gets back up like this. Her body stands up on its own. Her eyes are in the back of her head. She's totally and completely possessed by some entity that they called up out of the ground with their drawings that they do on a floor. That's an opening to the demonic. And she started like floating around the room. I was in shock. I literally ran out of there when I saw that. At that point, I was scared. I never went back to a psychic ever.
More desperate than ever, she took a suggestion from her ex-boyfriend and attended a church service.
The pastor was talking about how anger can cause us to do things that are very bad in our lives that we'll regret big time later. I thought, oh my gosh, God knows that I'm angry, and he's sending me this message through this preacher. The encounter I was really looking for was with God.
She signed up for a baptism in the ocean, and it was when she emerged from the water that she finally had a true spiritual experience.
I immediately accepted Jesus at that moment, and since I needed to feel something, God gave me something to feel. It was the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit of God filled me, and I felt amazing peace. I felt this amazing energy. The anger is gone, completely gone at that point.
And in its place was the love she'd always wanted.
He sought me and wanted me. And so that security that he's given me, I didn't find anywhere else, or even with my own parents or my family or my siblings or with a man. I found it. Jesus gave it to me.
Today, Marisol and her daughter live in Florida, where Marisol runs her own business. She knows her search for the truth is complete only in Jesus Christ.
There's no greater love for me. You can always count on God. He's so faithful. He's so amazing.
Jesus said that when we know the truth would set us free. You know, life is hard. It's filled with wonderful experiences, sometimes mountaintop experiences, and then there are those places of deep hurt, deep disappointment, deep pain. And everything in us wants to control our situation. Desperate to figure out the why, desperate to feel like we have some power in the midst of this craziness. And so often we turn to things that are dark, to other things other than God. God invites us to turn to him. Sometimes we don't even know that if we're not in the Word or we don't know someone who's sharing that message with us. And so someone comes along at that opportune moment when the door is open and says, well, try this. You know, I think you'll find some answers here. You know, Satan is so interesting. He always gives us that hook in the beginning. It's going to get better. You're going to feel better. In this situation, Marisol got a job. She was paid more. She got a boyfriend. But it didn't last. And once we bite, that hook is in us, and we need to choose to reject it. You know, the Bible actually speaks to all of this in numerous places. It says, why do you seek from spirits and mediums who peep and mutter instead of the Almighty God, the one who created you? Marisol had tried a couple of churches. It didn't work. A relationship with Jesus is not about church. It's not about rules and regulations. It's just what it says it is. It's a relationship. In that place of lostness and hurt and anger, because anger does force us to do things that we wouldn't do otherwise, and usually it's based on fear because we feel out of control in a scenario. But in the midst of all of that, God calls to us. He says, you'll find me when you seek for me with all of your heart. He wants to be found. He wants to know you. He wants you to know him in the midst of all of this. What an opportunity we have to come to the living God and to invite him into the midst of our circumstance, to confess that we have tried to do it without him. You know, that's why we sing as Christians songs like I Surrender All, because our first choice is almost always to try to control it ourselves. Our first choice when we're angry is almost always to want to reach out and do something to assure that we have control, even that we can retaliate to someone who's hurt us. Neither of those things are God's way. But something happens, and Marisol talked about it, you know, when she went into the water and she was baptized and she came up. She accepted Jesus and she was filled with the Holy Spirit, and it changed how she responded. It changed how she felt. She had an understanding spiritually that was different than she'd had before. She was a new person, and that's what the Bible promises you when you become a child of God, that the old passes away and all things become new. How do you receive this? How do you accept Jesus? It's a relationship. You talk to him. You say, Jesus, I'm a sinner. I'm tired of doing it my way. I know my sins need to be forgiven, and I know 2,000 years ago you paid the price for that. You paid the price for my salvation, and today I'm asking you to be the Savior of my life. I'm asking you to be the Savior of my soul. Forgive my sins. Every one of them, I confess them all to you. Redeem me and make me yours, Jesus. I give you all that I am and all that I have. After you've asked him to come into your life, thank him. Thank him for what he's done for you. I just want to say to those of you who might have dabbled in the occult, we have a wonderful material called Angels, Demons, and the End Times. We'd love to send you this for free. And if you just prayed that prayer or are going to, a new day is your packet also. How do you follow Jesus? How do you walk after him in all of this? It's yours for the asking. Call our toll-free number, 1-800-700-7000. Just say, I just prayed that prayer. I'd like the new day packet or the Angels, Demons, and End Times, and we'll get it out to you right away. Gordon?
Well, we've got some time for some email, and so I'll ask Terry a question. What can President Biden possibly hope to accomplish by financing both sides of the war in Israel?
Nothing. How's that for an answer? Nothing. I mean, there's such a, you know, it is an election year coming up, folks, and wanting to appease everybody is not the answer to any of this. What would you say?
Well, I think politicians do like to do that. They like to make everybody happy, and it's all part of a re-election strategy. I think on the international stage, there's another thing going where he's trying to show to the international community that America is still compassionate. But I think we all need to wake up to the fact that any humanitarian aid going into Gaza right now is at the complete control of Hamas. We also need to recognize that UNRWA needs to stop existing. All the funding from the UN, all the funding from the EU, all the funding from the US, all it's done is indoctrinate an ideology that says we need to wipe Israel off the map. That's what that money's being spent on. We need to stop sending money to that kind of hate. Here's a word from Colossians. For he has rescued us from the dominion of darkness and brought us into the kingdom of the Son he loves, the Jedediah, the Messiah. God bless you.